Euranet Plus Panorama is a weekly review of European news broadcast by our network of EU radio stations.
Welcome back to Euranet Plus Panorama. With winter knocking ever more insistently on our door, many in Europe are concerned about what the coming months will mean for their pockets. Will they be forced to choose, for example, between heating and eating? Last Wednesday, the 27th of November, MEPs in Strasbourg called on the European Commission to take action to tackle high energy prices, which are damaging European competitiveness and putting a strain on household budgets. Let's start with a few facts and figures. According to the much-discussed Draghi report, while electricity prices have consistently been higher in Europe than in the US, the gap today is wider than ever, with retail prices here 2 to 3 times those in the US and China. Around half of this extra cost is due to taxes, which US industry does not have to pay, and the EU's emissions trading system, designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. According to the Commission, almost 40% of the electricity produced across the bloc in 2022 came from renewable sources. But of course, not all countries are equally well advanced in that respect, and the countries likely to be facing higher rates of energy poverty this winter will be those with a lower share of renewables and/or less diversity in their energy mix. Member states with more energy-intensive industries, such as those in Central and Eastern Europe, will also be hard hit. But even in relatively rich countries, people are feeling the pinch. According to Statistics Austria, for example, some 280,000 Austrian households, 7% of the population, are unable to keep their homes adequately warm, pay energy bills on time, or replace inefficient appliances. And high energy costs have not only become a heavy burden for families near the poverty line, but also for those in the so-called middle class. To address this crisis, member states have put in place a range of tax cuts, subsidies and price caps. At the end of 2022, for instance, Austria established its electricity price brake, a major subsidy that has helped to relieve the burden of high energy prices. But at the end of 2024, this initiative will expire. This means that electricity prices and tariffs will rise, hitting many Austrian households hard, particularly over these coming winter months, says Euranet Plus member station Agora. Caroline Noirfort, head of the Office for the Fight Against Energy Poverty at Austria's Climate and Energy Fund, talks to them about the public funding on offer in Austria.
The federal government currently offers 3 important subsidies specifically for energy poverty. One is the housing umbrella, which covers outstanding rent and energy bills. The second is Clean Heating for All from the Ministry of the Environment. This is a program for homeowners who want to convert their heating system to a climate-friendly one, and that is subsidized up to 100%. And the third is based at the Climate and Energy Fund and is called Saving Energy in the Home. Here, there is free energy advice, and you can also exchange 1 or 2 old, inefficient household appliances for free. For example, an old refrigerator or an old stove. I think one of the most important measures in recent years was the electricity price brake. However, that expires at the end of the year. And that means that from the beginning of 2025, electricity bills will be higher again.
Martin Schenk, a spokesperson for the Austrian Poverty Conference, argues that the expiring price brake should not simply be cut, but instead converted into a form of energy safety net.
The electricity price brake cannot simply be phased out and nothing be put in its place, as we are currently seeing how sharply energy prices are rising again. It should be turned into a basic energy guarantee that ensures a certain amount of energy for everyone and thus combats and prevents poverty. Or there are tariffs, so to speak, that are socially graduated or income dependent. That would also be an option. We should have been working on such models over the last 6 months or year because we knew that the electricity price brake was expiring. But it is not too late. Something like that must be developed now. There are several options in the toolkit. There are already models of basic energy security in some European countries.
Unlike Vienna, Warsaw has adopted a bill to extend its freeze on energy prices into next year. Polish Environment Minister Paulina Hennig-Kloska tells Polski Radio that they have done this as they want to offer citizens a sense of security.
We are extending the maximum price for household end users of 500 Polish zloty per megawatt hour for a period of 9 months in 2025. Why 9 months? Because midway through the year, we will be reviewing tariffs and reviewing the situation in the electricity market. And this situation is very dynamic. It is improving. It is stabilizing. And on this basis, the government will have a quarter to make further decisions.
A few weeks ago, the Polish Parliament also passed legislation that gives energy-intensive enterprises high relief on part of their electricity bills. Energy price subsidies will remain in place too in Luxembourg, says national broadcaster 100.7, at least for electricity. Similarly, Romanian Energy Minister Sebastian Berduja reassures Radio Romania listeners that their price caps will remain in force.
Românii nu trebuie să se teamă în iarna aceasta nici de frica facturilor.
Romanians don't have to fear bills or the cold temperatures this winter. They will have gas, and bills will continue to be capped, exactly as they were last winter, both for electricity and natural gas. This scheme is in force until the 1st of April next year, and after this there will be ongoing support in place for vulnerable Romanians. We do not expect any significant bill increases. And for those Romanians who, due to their level of household income or other vulnerability factors, socio-economic factors, number of children, medical conditions, the use of a medical device that consumes more electricity, all of these things will be taken into account to ensure that we carry on protecting these Romanian citizens.
Toate aceste lucruri vor fi luate în calcul și pe acești români îi vom proteja în continuare.
So, while member states have been shown some slack recently when it comes to tampering with market prices, the lack of a common approach has ultimately exacerbated differences in prices across the EU. Indeed, while on average across the EU some 10.6% of households were unable to cover their energy bills in 2023, the rates of energy poverty in southeastern Europe are much higher than this. Insufficient cross-border infrastructure hampers the efficient distribution of electricity between regions, and southeastern Europe is clearly not fully integrated into the wider EU electricity market. It's in this context that Romania, Bulgaria and Greece clubbed together in October to request an intervention by the European Commission to tackle the consistently higher energy prices in their region compared to in Western Europe. These three countries want to put pressure on their Central European neighbours, such as Austria and Slovakia, to enhance their interconnection capabilities, as Greek Energy Minister Theodoros Skylakakis tells our colleagues at Sky.
We have a southeastern European phenomenon, this time including Austria, but the prices are absurd. We cannot accept such phenomena. There are three factors at play here. One is the lack of interconnections between Western Europe, which is full of cheap energy, and Southeastern Europe. Secondly, there is an algorithm that does not allow cables to be maximized. And thirdly, there is the Ukraine effect. Countering the first two requires time and institutional changes. In the meantime, we need a tool that does not allow excess profits at the expense of consumers and businesses.
Specifically on this final point, the three countries have proposed the imposition of a windfall tax on the electricity producers that have profited unfairly from the current market conditions. Martin Shirdevan, co-chair of the European Parliament's Left Group, raised this same point in a press briefing prior to last week's EP debate on energy prices. He also, perhaps unsurprisingly given his politics, makes a strong case for state control of the European energy market.
Above
all, however, we need strategic regulation of this market in the long term. This means that the public sector must control it. We must ensure that people are supplied with energy. To achieve this, energy prices must fall, including for small and medium-sized enterprises and for industry in Europe. This means that if energy companies make profits out of the crisis, we need an excess profit tax, so those who are making a fortune from this crisis situation also have to contribute their fair share of tax revenue. And above all, we need investment, massive investment in renewable energies and in Europe's energy independence.
It is in the area of market regulation that many observers believe the EU could and should be doing more. Romanian S&D member Dan Nica, to name but one. As a member of the European Parliament's Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, Nica has raised the issue of fraudulent practices in the European energy markets and demanded a stock exchange regulation to cover these markets. Radio Romania reports.
The only major markets in the European Union that are not regulated as stock exchanges are the electricity market and the natural gas market. And according to the European Securities and Markets Authority, the only two markets that use typical stock exchange mechanisms are the electricity and gas markets. When will you come up with a proposal for a stock exchange regulation for the electricity and gas market in the European Union so that we have transparency and predictability, so that we know how electricity and gas are being sold in the European Union and to whom, who the shareholders are, and, above all, what mechanisms exist for penalising those who resort to misleading practices, to practices that violate competition and that have led to absolutely unacceptable and unsustainable price increases.
Brussels has, however, been making some inroads towards supporting energy consumers. Repower EU pushes, for example, for more energy efficiency, more renewables and more storage solutions. And the EU's electricity market reform, which was adopted in April, aims to shield consumers from short-term price volatility, which is incidentally far greater in the EU than in other world regions, through the use of long-term hedging instruments and contracts. Energy poverty is not the only consequence of high energy prices, of course, despite being one of the most visible ones. They're also impacting on the bloc's competitiveness. German industry, for example, is under massive pressure, with bad news pouring in almost daily, says AMS. VW, Bosch, Ford, the list goes on, and thousands of jobs are at risk. A key factor in this downturn is the high price of electricity. Germany's, and indeed Europe's, energy-intensive industries simply cannot compete on a global stage when faced with prices at this level. Last Tuesday, the 26th of November, the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs hosted a big industry conference in Berlin. Speaking at the conference, Siegfried Russwurm, the president of the Federation of German Industries, underlined the impact of energy prices on competitiveness.
The high electricity prices are endangering industrial production and jobs in Germany. The unclear outlook for electricity charges is absolutely hindering investments. In this situation, internationally competitive electricity costs must once again be a priority. Reducing the massively rising network charges as an immediate measure could make a rapid contribution in the short term, for example by reintroducing a significant state subsidy without delay.
Thanks for listening. Come back next week for our penultimate panorama of the year.